Hello, public disorder. Welcome to the fucking news. I'm looting the shops. Here are the headlines tonight. Police, feardom and debtmocracy is safe in Greece tonight. Peace, freedom and debtmocracy. Amidst violent clashes between police and protesters, the Greek parliament voted in favour of a fantastic package of poverty, austerity measures, intended to save a few wealthy bankers losing their money. Save Greece from running its own affairs. The proposed tax hikes and spending cuts are very popular with bankers who lent the money they knew the nation couldn't afford, as it means they now own Greece, its people and its resources. Hurrah! Here's a special report from our correspondent in Greece, Stelios Debtmasses. Viewers are warned this report contains flash photography and disturbing scenes of a population powerless to resist financial slavery.
Over 2,000 years ago, ancient Greece was the birthplace of democracy, a form of government in which all citizens had an equal say in governing their lives. Now, in modern Greece, we see the birth of debtmocracy, a form of government where the people you owe money to govern your lives. Debtmocracy is sweeping away the sovereignty of people from Ireland to Spain, Portugal to Greece. Debtmocracy is coming to your country soon, if it's not already there. And it works something like this. You're a political party in opposition. After receiving large amounts of election funding from, let's say, Lord Astor Rothschild the 11th and his friends, you get elected. Now you're the government and temporarily in control of your country's finances. Woohoo! Time to serve the people. But then, the phone rings. It's Lord Astor Morgan Stanley Blackbeard the 9/11th. He says, you need to borrow vast amounts of money from him and his friends, or that picture of you with a goat is hitting the internet. You agree because, hey, what fun, you won't be paying it back, the people will. Anyway, you're looking forward to your next date with a goat. Meh. Years later, a new government is elected, interest rates have to rise, inflation rises, wages rise, and the cost of goats becomes prohibitive. The country's in ruins, the public sector can't function. Why not borrow more money? After all, you won't be paying it back, the people will. So, it's off to the IMF, World Bank, European Central Bank, but there's a problem. The banks want leverage, collateral, guarantees, influence over fiscal policy and control of government spending. In short, you become a nation of bailout bitches and government bond gimps because now you're the goat and lubrication is unaffordable. Welcome to debtmocracy. Welcome to your future. This is Stelios Debtmasses for the fucking news, somewhere in Greece.
Billions have been wiped off the value of your slavery in a week of turmoil on the stock markets of the world, amid concerns that European slaves aren't worth as much as they used to be, and the downgrading of America's AAA schmuck rating. Wealthy bankers all over the world have been rubbing their hands together in glee as bond yields and values plummet. Here's our economic gobbledygook correspondent, Runestone Entrail Reader. If, like me, you don't have shares or investments, you might be tempted to say, I don't give a fuck. I hope you all lose your shirts, you complicit, money-hungry, trough-snorting pigs, 'cause it's nothing to do with me. But it is. You see, part of the current, recurrent, permanent, fantasy financial crisis has to do with the cost of slavery, or government bonds. Bonds are promises by your government to submit you to economic slavery and tax you to death in order to pay back banks who bought the bonds. All sounds jolly decent and fair, doesn't it? Your country needs money to invade Iraq, invest in its future. Banks need to control your leaders. Get a return on their investors' deposits. Awfully quantitative easing, you know. Banks give governments imaginary money and your government give them your chains, national bonds, promising to tax you till you die or keeping you alive isn't worth it anymore. This would all be very well, but your slavery just isn't worth as much as it used to be. In fact, your slavery might soon be worth so little, banks won't accept bonds anymore, and governments will have to sell your children into slavery, and your children's children too, if you're Italian, or Greek, or Irish, or Spanish, or British, or American. Thanks, Runestone. So, put quite simply, as wealthy bankers print more money out of thin air, they gain control over your government, your lives and your future, making your elected rulers irrelevant. Nice. Far from being a cause of celebration, every billion wiped off the stock market is added to your slavery. Every dollar printed to ease the quantity is more slavery. Every loss of the banks is added to your account as debt. And every citizen of every nation in debt is the property of the creditor of that nation. Because we owe, so we are owed. You can see how that works there. US President Barack Obama has cited some progress in talks to raise the nation's slavery debt ceiling. It seems Americans are not in enough slavery debt at the moment, and if they don't get into more debt or slavery before the 2nd of August, terrible things will happen to very, very rich people. And we can't have that, can we? So, to avoid the very, very rich people running out of money, the country must raise its debt limit and borrow more than the current $14.3 trillion. Let me just say that again. Borrow more than the $14.3 trillion they're already in debt. Nice. Get stuck in, America. Gobble up that debt. You can do it. No tax rises, though. More like Chinese wages, Dickensian poverty, and an environment carved from Dante's Inferno, served up with the stolen dreams of every future generation. Enjoy. Meanwhile, Eurozone leaders are meeting to solve the Greek debt crisis and stave off a bigger Italian debt crisis, or else the negative consequences to the very, very rich people will be felt across Europe and beyond, said the very, very rich people. Both debt crises require the people to passively accept the debts banks created by printing and lending nothing whilst claiming it had value. This is a process known as hoodwinking in banking circles, or Ponzi fraud to the rest of the world. Then the people of America and Europe must place a large penis that ejaculates lies directly into their mouth and begin sucking as hard as they can. If any of the lies are not swallowed completely, European leaders and President Obama may have to hold their own people down as banks fuck them again and again and again with a strap-on pyramid until very, very rich people feel a bit better. The United Kingdom of Great Britain has been burned to the ground and looted to within an inch of its longing for a police state. Burning shops and hooded rioters swept across the media in an orgy of hype, fixated on materialism, law and order, fascist police state. Isn't it awful? Oh, when shall we call in the army? Oh, string them up, I say. Oh. Consumerist demand, antisocial behaviour. Police have not been criticised for not shooting more people dead, but today a spokesperson for the Thin Blue Line didn't say, "Thanks to our killing, shooting dead Mr. Duggan, a father of 4, on Thursday, we sparked the whole rioting weekend, but shh, we don't talk about that anymore." The 4 nights of rioting, looting and arson in the United Kingdom has been welcomed by David Cameron, the Tory government, and the corrupt Metropolitan Police, because rioters have completely destroyed the public perception of the police as lying, corrupt scumbags in the pay of Rupert Murdoch. And as of now, no one will be reminded of how they looked the other way on phone hacking, so the Tories could sell our media to a devious old hack, his mail-order bride, and his inept son. In the aftermath of the initial rioting in Tottenham 4 nights ago, traders and residents have accused the police of standing by and allowing people to loot. This was strenuously denied by Police Inspector Snakepit from deep inside a bunker on the Isle of Wight, where he is coordinating thousands of CCTV pictures showing rioters rioting while the police stood about and did nothing. Some mistake there, surely. Some say it's Britain's revolution, baby, and this is the start of our mass mind awakening, dude. Poor people are in the street looking for a brighter day, brother. Some say it's just mindless discontent with a system designed to stir desire for shit we don't need. And others say, hey, if it kicks off again tomorrow night, let's hit them Apple stores. It's totally full of iPads, innit? Syrian troops and tanks have been killing and harming many more people than Saudi Arabian troops, or Bahraini, or Israeli, or Yemeni, or Qatari, or Emirate troops
this week. They have advanced deep into the city of Hama and blown lots of fucking shit and people up, putting an end to weeks of not being in the news. Putting an end to weeks of anti-government protests. After days of debate, the UN Security Council has agreed on the wording of a statement to condemn the violence. The 15 mealy-mouthed, worm-tongued, hypocritical, toothless, gumless, talking shop tossers member council formally adopted this statement condemning the widespread violations of nice things you might do to your population in relation to human nicey rights, and the use of force against civilians, even very pesky, annoying ones, by a sovereign and independent Syrian authority, and called for those responsible to be held accountable, but not to anything really bad, lest the world start wondering what happened in Bahrain when all those Saudi thugs went to town. The continuing violence drew a strong response from UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon. Mr. Assad, he said, must be aware that under international humanitarian law, this is accountable. Going on not to say, don't we look like a bunch of tossers when this shit happens? Would despots please stop making us look like Israeli apologists that we are? Because we've never said anything like that about them. Look, I don't want to rag on Israel, really I don't. Everybody's entitled to a nation carved out by violence and to subject its people to lies and get away with anything it wants to, just like the rest of the countries. But shh, people are starting to talk. Come on, have a bit of savvy. We can't pretend everybody's angry mobs are terrorist nutjobs with no grievance, all right? Chill the fuck out, Syria. Jeez, you're making Israel look bad.
Japan has raised the alert level at a stricken nuclear plant from 4 to 5 on a 7-point international scale for atomic incidents. High levels of radioactive bullshit have been pouring out of Japan since the earthquake damaged the Fukushima nuclear plant last week. Residents of Tokyo have been staying indoors to avoid exposure to the bullshit fallout, and intense efforts at the plant to cool the damaged reactors continue. Wait a minute though, didn't we used to explode atomic bombs all over the Earth? Oh yes, we did. Here's our science correspondent, Dr. Doom, with a report about our ongoing stupidity and what we're not going to do about it.
Radioactive fallout, creator of many comic book superheroes and international bullshit. You see, much of our knowledge of the distribution of radionuclides has been derived from the period of intensive nuclear testing in the atmosphere during the 50s and 60s. It is estimated that more than 500 megatons of nuclear yield were detonated in the atmosphere between 1945 and 1971, about half of this yield being produced by fission reactions. The peak occurred in 1962 when a total of 340 megatons were detonated in the atmosphere by the United States and Soviet Union. Nice. So, what's the problem with Fukushima? Since we already irradiated Earth by exploding 500 nuclear weapons in our own air. Talk of a crisis caused by a power station leaking a few rads seems trite in comparison. So, let's have a look at humanity's nuclear activity. Production of nuclear weapons and nuclear power all produce nuclear waste, a substance that will remain toxic and deadly to organic life for thousands and thousands of years. This waste doesn't occur naturally. We don't know how to get rid of it, and we're making more every day. Let's just go over that in case the stupidity of it was missed by anyone. Humans are filling their planet with the deadliest toxic substances ever discovered, without knowing how to get rid of any of it. Much of it is the result of making weapons too dangerous to use, and the rest is to produce electricity so we can see what we're shopping for. Great stuff, humanity. What have you got for an encore? Shitting in the soup? So, what of the Fukushima plant and its problems? Well, you have to wonder how 6, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nuclear reactors were built on top of the world's most active earthquake zone, next to the beach, for easy tsunami access. Such piss-poor safety features that none of them survived the natural disaster. This led directly to the unnatural disaster we now witness. While news shows entertain us with endless graphics of how to cool a reactor, actual efforts to cool the real radioactive pile seem to amount to pissing on them from helicopters or spitting at them from fire trucks. The likelihood of a meltdown increases with each passing day, but don't worry, the total amount of radiation that they might release will be less than that spread across Iraq by depleted uranium shells. Hey, and who gives a fuck about that? This is Dr. Doom for the fucking news, somewhere in the lead line bunker.